So we support founders from really early stage startups all the way down to IPO. And then on the other side of the fence, we're also supporting the funds who back these founders.
Today on the podcast, we have Arpit Gupta, who's the Managing Director of HSBC Innovation Banking. He led their rebrand last year and it's helping them to expand into global markets this year. We talk about why he decided to back us. So HSBC Innovation Banking are our headline sponsors for this podcast. We talk about why that's so important to have these relationships with the community. We talk about the rebrand itself, how they went about that, how they were able to make it so successful. We look at Arpit's own angel investing and how being in the startup ecosystem has enabled him to find some amazing companies and offer some really great value to them. We then also look at growth. How is HSBC expanding this year and the key role that brand plays within that? We're the Bay HQ and I'm Ami, your host, and we're powered by HSBC Innovation Banking. So thanks so much for joining us today, Arpit. It's been so great to have you on and supporting us and what we're doing today and the entire mission of the Bay HQ. So for those of you who don't know, HSBC Innovation Banking is our headline partners. And I'd love to know, obviously I know, but can you tell the audience, why is it so important for the bank to support initiatives like us?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think HSBC Innovation Banking has always been about, playing a critical role in funding the founders and finding them the right investments. So we've always backed bold ideas. We've always backed people who want to do something. And I think when we met and we started talking about what you guys are doing, it was very clear from the beginning that, the mission that you're on is also very aligned to what we want to do. And it's very much in our wheelhouse to support people like you and the work that you're doing. So it wasn't really I wouldn't say it was a lot of maths behind it. I think it was a very natural alignment of vision, purpose, mission. And I'm just excited to see how you guys are growing on a day-by-day basis. It's actually quite exciting to follow that.
Yeah, thanks so much. And what's really interesting as well is that we often we'll have an advert during this episode, right? Telling people about what you guys are doing. But I'd love to hear from your own words. For the founders listening, people listening who potentially either they're starting a company already, maybe they're starting a fund. What is it that they should come to you for?
Yeah, so I think, innovation banking, our purpose is very simple, right? And if I can just say our mission statement is to ignite bold ideas that reshape the world, right? I think that's the mission that we have. And we truly believe in that. So we support founders from really early stage startups all the way down to IPO. And then on the other side of the fence, we're also supporting the funds who back these founders. So I think our role in the ecosystem is almost on both the sides, if you play. Mm-hmm. We're always constantly connecting the dots in the ecosystem. So our role is that of, always be the enabler of meeting people and making people connect with each other, whether it is a fund connecting to a founder, whether it is a founder wanting to do an IPO. So our proposition is very simple. We bank the founders and investors, and we bank them all the way from startups all the way to IPO.
What's interesting for you guys as well is that you guys had a big change in the last year, and some of that startup mentality has had to come out too, of adapting and relaunching a new brand. And you're behind a lot of that. Can you talk us through that process of going from the brand you had to then deciding, okay, we need to rebrand, set this up, and do it as successfully as you have?
Yeah, I think last year was an exciting year in a lot of ways. I think we had a lot of sleepless nights. If I want to do it again, I'm not sure. Maybe not so soon again. So I think the process was pretty intense because we were planning to launch this brand in a very short frame of time, and it was almost starting from blank sheet of paper. Right. So we didn't have anything. We didn't have a name. We didn't have a logo. We didn't know what colors we were going to be. We didn't even know, how it is going to land in the market. So there was just a lot of ambiguity. But one thing that we were very clear was from the beginning is whatever we were going to build, it was going to be built in partnership with our clients. So we were always going to co-create. So I think what we ended up doing, and in hindsight, I think it was a great thing we did, is we created this very small forum of some very exclusive clients with us where we were constantly going back and testing our hypothesis. So anything that we were coming up with, we were constantly engaging with them to say, what do you think about this? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? And so on. So I think that really helped because that kept us true to what the ecosystem really wanted. And then I think when we did launch the brand and we did come up with our name and our visual identity, it wasn't really a shock to the system because it was kind of built along the way with them, or at least key inputs from them. So that really helped. And yeah, and obviously, we've had a successful launch at London Tech Week. We had, the Prime Minister come and help us announce the brand. And then since then, we've been scaling the brand into other markets as well, right? So we're launching into US. We've already launched in the US, Israel, and Hong Kong. And then we're constantly looking at other markets as well.
So I was at London Tech Week in the audience as well. So I remember that, where HSBC Innovation Banking was just everywhere. So at that point, I think I knew a couple of people from the bank, but I didn't know too many yet. And I remember me and my co-founder being like, we've got to get these guys to be the ones to support us, because there's so many different people in this industry and there's a lot of noise. But it just stood out so clearly as you guys were the leaders in this field, right? And you mentioned there about the brand and the visual identity. Can you tell us some of the story behind that, of why you made the decisions you did?
Yeah. So again, I think one of the key insights that we got from talking to the ecosystem was that we had to come up with our own identity. I think the easiest job would have been to just adopt HSBC, logo and identity, and I think that was everybody could have slept a lot more earlier in the day. But the reason we didn't want to do that was because that would not give the message to the market that we are indeed a specialist bank, right? We do what we do in a very sort of a different way. So that was one of the reasons driving it. The way, and then when we started thinking about, okay, what would be the true representation of who we are, our expertise, our role that we play in the ecosystem, our focus on innovation, right? Like, what would be a true representation of that? And we landed on this idea of a prism, right? And that's our core visual identity. And the whole idea of the prism is that when you see things through a prism, they look different, right? You see different perspectives. And in this scenario, we are the prism of the ecosystem, where founders and investors and funds, they look at the ecosystem through us. They see different perspectives, and we are able to bring them that different perspective to that. So I think the prism felt like the true, it's a true representation of who we are. And I think that resonated really well. We also then looked at the different color scheme within the prism, and I can't even tell you how much debate we had on the different hues of blue and yellow and the red. But I think the whole idea, again, was that our identity sticks apart when you compare it with other banks, right? I think most of the banks, if you look at, are very corporate, and rightly so or wrongly so, I don't know. But our whole purpose was that we didn't want to come across as another red or another blue or another green. Because we want to position ourselves differently. So hence the idea of a prism, hence the idea of a multicolored prism as well.
What part of that did you enjoy the most? Because I know it was obviously a huge challenge to change the branding and everything, but it must have been fun too to have this new blank slate that you could do whatever you wanted with.
Yeah, I mean, it was super exciting, right? Like, I think you don't get an opportunity to build a big financial brand on a daily basis. So I think it was an opportunity for a lot of people, which is great. I think the fun part of that was to come up with this idea and this concept and tinker with it until you get it right. So I think that the whole process was quite exciting. What was not so exciting was the debates and you have to take people along on a journey, and the sleepless nights that everybody had, and the process itself can be quite cumbersome, especially when you're trying to squeeze, what could have been potentially a 6 to 8 month of work into 8 weeks, right? That makes the process even more intense. So yeah, that's what I said. If I want to do it all over again, probably, but not so soon.
And as we look to where we are today, right? So you continue to manage the brand. And what are some of the things that often you have to think about? What are some of the challenges you have? And what are you working on in the background in order to keep pushing the HSBC Innovation Banking brand and pushing it forward? Yeah,
so I think our focus, so last year the focus was all about making people aware of who we are, right? I think it was all about telling them our proposition. It's about landing the brand in the right position and the right place. I think this year is going to be all about scaling, right? I think this is all about us telling more and more people of what we do, how we do. I think it's also looking at things in a more international way. So rather than just focusing on the UK, we look at ecosystem in a more global, holistic way. I think those are going to be our more focus areas. Then on the more, I think, creative part of it, we're going to be starting to look at how can we push our identity even further. So last year was all about, just getting the basics out of the door. This year is going to be, what does our brand 2.0 looks like? And how can we make it a lot more contextual? And how can we really use the brand to showcase the stories of our clients? Because really, I think at the end of the day, where we want to be is we want to make the prism or our visual identity synonymous with the success of our clients. So we need to find a way of how we merge the two together.
You mentioned about expanding internationally, and you said there's been 3 more countries so far, right? So that's US, Hong Kong, and Israel. Was that a new challenge for you as well? Because I guess obviously before you've been very UK focused. What were some of the difficulties you had there, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, it's a work in progress, right? So US has historically been a very strong market for us, especially when we were, SVB. But with HSBC, I think it's a new dynamic, right? So the market over there is very much in a mode where we need to tell people who we are. And it's almost kind of starting from scratch. Israel and Hong Kong, again, have different market dynamics. Israel is a smaller ecosystem, but a much more tight ecosystem there. So over there, again, I think the job is very much about explaining to people what the brand looks like and so on. I think Hong Kong is the most interesting one for me because HSBC is such a massive brand in Hong Kong. It's almost synonymous with banking, right? Like people don't think of anything else except HSBC there. So over there, I think the challenge is more about how do you bring your innovation credentials out, right? So people don't think of you as a traditional old school bank. People are more focused around, okay, this is the new kind of a bank, this is innovation capabilities. So I think each market have their own challenges. And the way we're going about it is we're looking at it at an individual market level. We're not putting big, blanket sort of solution that covers everything. And I think that's what we're going to continue to do this year.
And I think what's interesting too is obviously, as I said, you're doing this big expansion yourself, which a lot of your clients are going to be doing. So it's interesting to see you've got that now parallel of you understand each other very well. And you must have seen so many different startups and scale-ups through your ecosystem. What are some of the things that you think, like from your experience, that maybe they should be paying attention to, lessons they could take from your experience when they're trying to build their own brands?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think any business trying to build a brand or scale, right? I think you've got to stay true to the market, right? And I think that's the one learning that we've always had is that you have to put the client in the middle of everything that you're doing. Because at the end of the day, we can have very fancy process and big agencies and big budgets to build something really cool. But if it doesn't stick and if it's not resonating with your core audience, then it's never going to see the light of day. So I think keeping your client in the middle of it, I think is going to be very, very crucial. The other thing as well, I feel, is that you need a lot of support when you're doing something. I mean, we had massive support of our ecosystem, right? I think people really were rooting for us. It isn't something that we were doing in a silo, right? And I think that support is so infectious in a way because it just lets you carry on. So I think if you can find those advocates around you, whether it is industry players, whether it is your own customers, whether it is employees, you have to find those advocates who can continue to cheer for you. That makes the job slightly more easier, I think.
And one of the things I know you do as well yourself is angel investing. So it's one way that you're connected to the startup ecosystem in your own personal capacity too. And sometimes I think some people listening obviously are going to be either bankers or consultants or things like that. And they don't quite realize that's something they can do. So what got you into angel investing? Was that because you were seeing so many incredible companies through the bank, or what was the motivation there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always kind of been from this idea that, look, I have always been drawn to problem solving, right? And in my way, the way I kind of interpret this is with entrepreneur journey, you're effectively trying to solve a problem. So I've always been drawn to that mindset that if somebody's trying to solve a problem, let me see if I can help in any way. So that's been my start. And I think when I see, an interesting proposition or interesting company doing something and solve a problem, my first question is actually not even how can I fund you? My first question is, hey, can I help in any way? And it could be something as simple as, hey, I don't know how to do this. Can you just tell me how to do it? And I was like, sure. So it's not always starting with investing. I think it's always just starting about, okay, I'm really curious about the problem you're trying to solve. And just let me know if I can help in any way. And then eventually, obviously, the more you get deeper into it, the more you realize that actually this is this can be a pretty good business. So if there is, if you guys are looking for investment, happy to, start there. So that's how I usually start. And again, I think for me, I find that if anybody wanting to get into that space, I think if you look at anybody around you who's either starting a business or who's wanting to start a business, I think always if having that mindset of how can you help them in solving the problem is a great starting point, rather than going with the mindset that, okay, I'm going to put some money in it, so I need 5 answers from you before I can start. I think then you're effectively creating more questions for the person rather than trying to solve the problem.
How do you tend to help these founders? So is it to do with your brand role and you try to help them on the brand side, or is it a variation or mix of things?
I think it's a real mix, really. I think because everybody's on a different trajectory, right? Some people are just starting off, some people have done that bit and now looking to scale. So my expertise obviously is kind of in multiple areas. So there, whether it is marketing, whether it is product, whether it is general business, growth strategies. So really, it's whatever the stage of the company is and what they're looking for. And sometimes I think I find founders just need also just somebody to listen, right? They're not necessarily wanting me to do anything.
Yeah.
And I've had those conversations as well, that people just come into me like, look, man, I just want to talk to you. I was like, yeah, sure. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just, like I said, I think you just have to be with them. And I think sometimes you just listen to what they're looking for. Sometimes you can play a part in it. Sometimes you just don't, and that's fine too.
What are you excited for looking into 2024? Like, you obviously have these different hats you wear, so the angel investing side, all of the amazing stuff happening with HSBC Innovation Banking. What's some of the stuff that you're looking forward to the most in terms of challenges? Or
yeah, I think look, 2024 I think is going to be quite an interesting year, especially from where we're coming in 2023, right? So I think I feel that 2024 is going to be about, things are going to start to get a little bit steady, right? We've had pretty sort of a choppy couple of years, especially last year, I think. I think things are going to start to get a lot more steadier. So people are going to start to calm down.
Yeah.
Whether it is founders, whether it is investors, whether it is in general. The other thing I'm also thinking is going to happen is, and I think this is more of a human emotion, is people are, I think they're starting to get into this mode of de-accelerating. I read this somewhere the other day, and I think it really resonated with me, that I think we've had such rapid growth for the last couple of decades, whether it is innovation, whether it is economic growth, whether it is personal growth. There's just so much new that has happened over the last couple of decades. I think we're reaching a point where people are starting to think about, de-accelerating from that. People wanting to go back to basic, simple things. And I think there's something in there which I feel is going to really resonate with a lot of people. I don't think people are particularly looking for the next technological advancement. I know there's a lot of talk about AI, and I think, again, AI is going to be great, but AI, I think, is going to be great where it is making your life simpler and helping you get to that de-acceleration mode, right? So if you can use ChatGPT on a regular basis, on your day-to-day basis, then that's great, because that'll help you de-accelerate from a couple other things. I'm not sure if people are going to be looking for an AI-powered backpack, for example, because I don't know what they're going to do with it. It's a great innovation, but I don't know if they're going to do anything with it. So I think that's where I feel 2024 is going to be. It's going to be about that. I think it's going to be level setting a little bit. I think it's going to be steadying the markets a little bit, and I think people are going to have this realization that we're going to de-accelerate a little bit.
We hope you're enjoying the episode so far. We just want to give a quick shout out to our headline partners, HSBC Innovation Banking. One of the biggest challenges for so many startups is finding the right bank to support them. Because you might start off and try to use a traditional bank, but they don't understand what you're doing. You're just talking to an AI assistant, or you're talking to somebody who doesn't really understand what it is you've been trying to do. HSBC have got the team they've built out over years to make sure they understand what you're doing. They've got the deep sector expertise, and they can help connect you with the right people to make your dreams come true. So if you want to learn more, check out hsbcinnovationbanking.com. Yeah, it's really interesting to see as well, because like I said, this AI is just changing so many things at once. And it's difficult because some people feel like they have to keep up or it's going to fall behind. But what I always think about with that kind of stuff is like, I let everybody else experiment. Once they've worked out how it works, then I'll just follow their playbook, right? That's the easy way, because say, for example, with a podcast, I probably have had 100 people in the last year reach out like, I'm creating an AI podcast tool. Do you want to test it? And I don't really want to test it.
Yeah.
Once it's working and you've got customers and it's working, then great. But at this early stage, it's can be noise. And this is obviously one of the difficult things for many innovators, right? Is that you need to get the right problem. And sometimes it's that problem that people aren't paying attention to is where you can really make a difference. Whereas if you're rushing into what everybody else is trying to do, then you're just part of the pack. Yeah. And there's some really exciting things coming out from people who are doing things differently. And I think it was health tech was the biggest investment last year, right? The most invested sector. Because people, as you said, they're thinking about health, they're thinking about how do they live longer, how do they live healthier. And that sometimes doesn't get the headlines.
Yeah.
The AI things maybe get the headlines, whereas healthcare is actually what's on a lot of people's minds, right? You want to make sure you're healthy.
Yeah.
If you're not healthy, it doesn't matter how good AI is if you can't enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, right? Because I was in a session a couple of days ago, and we were looking at a couple of stats, and one of the stat that jumped out for me was there was a survey that was done, and in that it was just general public, like no segments, nothing, just general public, random, poll, and the people were asked a question that what are the top 5 things you expect from companies? What do you expect a company for you to do, right? Just very general. The second thing on that list was, I want a company to contribute towards my health and wellness. Any company, any brand, doesn't matter what sector. So I think there's a general perception in people, or the expectation from people, that corporates or organizations need to do more in order to contribute towards my well-being as a human being, right? And I think it goes back to that whole idea that simplicity and that whole idea of, I want to go back to basics, or want to go back to simple living. And if an organization can help me do that or achieve that, whether it is by taking away unnecessary friction from my life, whether it is about creating a product which will take away that chaos from my life, I think that is what going to be quite successful.
And how do you think like HSBC Innovation Banking is adapting to that trend, or what's maybe happening within the bank that's reflecting that?
So I think, HSBC Innovation Banking is a relationship-based bank, right? It's always been a relationship-based bank. And I think that's what differentiates us. So the idea of having this human-to-human contact, we're not sitting behind a wall. We are not sitting behind AI. We are not, we don't have complicated, long, drawn processes and all that stuff. I think, so the bank has always been very human-led. I think where we're even going further now, and with the power of HSBC, is doing that at scale. So what we were able to do in the UK for UK companies is now having to be replicated across maybe 4 other markets or 5 other markets, right? So the scale is different. We're also now, I think, able to, whereas the banking solution, innovation banking solution, was kind of whatever the product suite that we had, we could offer that. But now with HSBC, we are suddenly able to offer a much bigger product suite as well, right? So which means, we can actually talk to you, not just from a startup to an IPO to a fund, but then when let's say if you're a founder and you start a company and you check out, now suddenly you have a lot of this money. What do you want to do with this money, right? So the wealth management solution comes in. So I think our approach, again, to our products and solution is all about how can we create simplicity in life? And it's more at a human level.
I also hope the wealth management side is doing the other way around. So some of the founders who've exited, maybe they didn't bank with HSBC Innovation Banking before, but now when they're going to start their next startup, then hopefully they send them your way as well. And then it's obviously that virtuous circle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we are probably one of the very few banks which actually have a huge referral network. Because, again, I think it goes back to the ethos that we are a relationship-based bank, right? So if people have a good relationship with some product or some brand, the chances of them recommending is much higher, right? Yeah. And I think banking is probably one of those industries where referral is even the hardest. Like, I don't remember the last time you referred your bank to someone, right? Nobody refers a bank.
Yeah.
It's not something you do that, right? You can refer somebody your car or something else. So I think we're fortunate in a way that people do feel passionate about it. I
think, like you said there about the relationship side as well, because when we've been going for a year and 3 months now at this point, and at the beginning, one of the tough things was you're trading emails with people, but one of the things that you guys did is that you do so many events, and that means that you can go along, you can learn for free, you get to meet people from the ecosystem. Then we were able to make friends with different people. So I want to shout out a couple people, but then I'm gonna figure other people, so I'm not going to do it. But they know who they are, hopefully. And they'll probably send me this clip of the podcast now that you didn't say my name. But what that meant is that we had this relationship with people, and we could actually tell that they cared. Because like you said, even with our own angel investment, we're helping people before you have anything to gain from it.
Yeah.
And what stood out to us is that they were genuinely curious about what we're doing. Even if it wasn't necessarily a sponsorship or anything at the moment, it was about like, oh, like what you're doing is cool. Like, oh, how can I get involved? Like, have you talked to these guys? And there was that proactiveness that I think came from the people at HSBC Innovation Banking, which we weren't really getting elsewhere. Other people, you'd have a call with them, what can we get out of this? That was it. That was the conversation. And for what we're doing, that's not what we wanted.
Yeah.
So that's another way you guys stood out to us, is that there's a good probably 50 people we enter at the bank now, where we can have a chat with them, where they message me. I've got someone on WhatsApp. I've got some of them I can just go and play football with. And it does feel more like that family kind of style vibe, or like team vibe, rather than like that barrier that a lot of other companies I think have.
Yeah, and I think that's literally the reason why the bank stands out, right, in the innovation economy. Because I do feel that innovation economy is a very tightly knit community, right? Founders, entrepreneurs, investors, funds, they all know each other, right? Everybody kind of interacts with each other one way or the other. So I think with such a tight knit community, you cannot be a sort of a traditional bank in a way. Right? Like you have to have a relationship based approach. So I think that's what stands us apart. And that actually came to our rescue a lot as well, right? So last year, because of all of the changes that we were going through, the one thing which was the rock solid constant was the support of the ecosystem, right? And that would have not happened if we didn't have those relationships, right? Yeah. So I think it's slightly weird actually of how people feel about a bank. I've never actually known for somebody to feel so passionately about a bank, but I think it's a good weird in a way, because I think that makes you special.
It comes down to people, I think, right? Is that because we already knew people at the bank when the news broke, and you're worried for the people there, right? Because you know they've treated you well, so you want the best for them. And say other banks we've used, or like your high street bank, you don't really have a personal connection to them, because you don't know anybody there. They've never really made an effort with you. Whereas that's the big thing that stands out. And I think especially for the startup ecosystem too, is that there's so many things that a founder is worried about all the time, right? So there's so many things that can go wrong, the legals, all this kind of stuff. And on the banking side, you don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So to have somebody to kind of hold your hand a bit and just give you a bit of guidance, it actually makes a huge difference, because you're worried about hiring, you're worried about clients, you're worried about so many other things. To know that you've got somebody, a trusted partner who's going to, that you've got a vested interest in their success too, right? You want to see them succeed because you want to maintain that relationship. So to have that, I think, makes a huge difference. Whereas, say for a traditional business, it's such a large organization, it's quite faceless. They just don't really, the people you interact with don't really care about what you're doing all the time, right?
Yeah, and I think that's why, this whole thing is that a founder's journey is not an easy journey, right? Or any, fund manager or an investment fund. No journey is fun at the start of it, because there's just going to be so much more that you have to do, the planning in it, the obstacles that you're going to get. So it's never nobody's flying, had a great start. So I think our job and our role that we play in the ecosystem is that how can we reduce that friction from those early days in anybody's life, right? So I think that whole idea of, if we can take away the pain of at least the banking side of things, so then you can go and focus on what you really are passionate about, which is your idea, which is what you want to build, right? So the last thing that you want to be doing is drawing your energy on boring stuff that you don't actually want to be, you're not passionate about, which is fine. And I think this is where the partnership really works with a bank like ours, because we have sector expertise, we have deep expertise, and we know what we're doing, which you can totally rely on so that you can focus on what you really want to do. I think that's why innovation banking credibility in the ecosystem is quite good.
So thanks so much for coming on today, Arpit. We're going to need to move into the quick fire questions now. So first question is, who are 3 British Asians they love to shout out they think you're doing incredible work and the audience should be paying attention to?
So 3 British Asians I would love to shout out to is, one is Joel Gujral. He has a startup called Mind Up, which I think is doing phenomenal. And I think I love the work that he's doing because it's so purpose driven. And I can just see him making such a big impact to the community and the work that he's doing. So I think go check out Mind Up. I think he's doing some great work. The other one is a guy called Musa Tariq. He comes from the world of brand and marketing, and I think he's done some really good projects around leading brand transformation for companies like Airbnb, Ford, Apple, and he's just an all-around good guy to think about business and have conversations. So I think he's a great guy to be around. And the other one is Lopa Patel. I think she's a really, really strong advocate for British Asians, entrepreneurs particularly. And I think she's keeping the flag high in terms of making sure that we show up at the right forums, we have a voice at the right table. So yeah, more power to her.
Awesome. So obviously, Joel's been on this podcast before, and I think he shouted you out, did he?
Oh, did he? If he did, he better did.
Yeah. We'll find out. We'll check after this, yeah. So next question is, if people want to find out more about you, find out more about HSBC Innovation Banking, where should they go to?
Please do. I'm all over the internet. So I'm at all of the usual social media channels. So catch me on LinkedIn, catch me on Instagram. I'm not sure if I check my Facebook anymore, but yeah, I'm still there. But yeah, that would be the best way to get hold of me.
And then is there anything that you need help with right now that maybe the audience could help you with or help HSBC with?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, look, I'm always very keen to, hear new ideas. I'm always very keen to see, like I said earlier, if there are any particular challenges or problems that I could help with, or if there's anything that I can contribute to. So please do reach out to me. But yeah, any comments, any advice, always welcome.
Awesome. So thanks so much for coming on today. Have you got any final words?
Nope. I think it's been fantastic. It's been great. I love what you guys are doing. I'm really, really passionate about, I think, the impact that you're going to make in the community. And I think it's been long coming to have a forum and a platform like this. So well done to you and Gurveer. And I can only wish more power to you guys, right? So keep doing the good work. And I have 2024 is going to be one of a moonshot year for you guys. So I'm hoping for that.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for listening. It means a huge amount to us. And we don't think you realise how important you are. Because if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you leave us a 5-star review, it makes a world of difference. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here, to inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians, if you do those things, you can help us achieve that mission. And you can help us make a bigger impact. And by doing that, it means we can get bigger guests, we can host more events, we can do more for the community. So you can play a huge part. So thank you so much for supporting us.